Hello, everyone. Welcome to Reflections on Health podcast. My name is Jackie. I'm here with Marty, and I've been excited to interview Marty as a guest. Marty's been my physio mentor for over a year, and he's been an absolute inspiration as a mentor. So, Marty, to start, can you take me back? Why did you decide to be a physio? What kind of inspired you into that profession?
That's a great question, Jackie. Firstly, thanks for reaching out and asking me to be interviewed. As I was just saying before, this is a whole new experience for me too, and I hope it is interesting and useful for you and others to listen to us chat. My inspiration for being a physio, which was a long time ago now, I guess, like a lot of young people, I played sport. I got injured. I saw a physio who, when I look back now, probably wasn't that inspirational at the time. That was back in the days where there was very passive sort of involvement in terms of treatment. I was always interested. I was good at school, and I liked school, and I was, I always got good marks at school and was pretty motivated to do well. So I was always looking at health field, and I looked at a whole lot of different areas in that sort of year 11, year 12 time when you're trying to decide a career. And it was in that time when I got injured at playing footy and went and had some treatment with a physio, and I thought, this might be okay. Medicine was still on my list at that point, and it was probably number one on my list. And I got enough marks to do medicine, but I remember distinctly, it was almost by default I did physio, I reckon. I remember distinctly one day in year 12, I was sick and I had to go to the doctor, and my mum took me to the GP, and I sat in the waiting room, and then I went into the GP clinic, got my script or whatever. The doctor looked at me and, listened to my chest or whatever, and walked out. And I said to Mum, I can't do that job. She goes, what? I said, I can't do that job. There's no way, no, I'm going to do that for the rest of my life. And so I pivoted, and I put physio number one on my, preference list. And was accepted into physio almost by default, and it really wasn't until the end of second year when I thought, yeah, this is definitely what I want to do. So I wasn't so much inspired to be a physio; it was almost by default, I guess. But honestly, I have never ever regretted my choice, and never wanted. I look back now and see what doctors do, and I think I don't want to. I'm glad I didn't go down that pathway, and here I am, 35 or so years later, and I'm still as inspired and enjoying my profession as I will ever have, really.
I love that. Yeah. I feel like sometimes we're kind of taken in the path that we need to go, and it's maybe not so obvious initially, but yeah.
Yeah, so I feel very lucky that I'm in that space that I can say that, at this stage in my career that I'm, as I said, 35 or so years in, 36 actually now, I've lost count. And still like it. I feel very blessed that that's the case. Because a lot of people, I've always thought how hard it must be for people to get up every day and go to a job that they dread doing. And luckily, I've never felt that. We all have our good and our bad days, but overall, I can still, fire up and think, all right, I'm off to work, and that's something that I enjoy doing.
Absolutely. Was it you who I was talking to once about Ikigai?
Yes.
Tell me about Ikigai.
Well, Ikigai, I'm probably going to get this wrong. My wife is the expert on Ikigai, but we've got a book, and she's read it. I actually haven't read it, but the concept of Ikigai is a Japanese, I guess, lifestyle approach where collectively you're doing something that you love. You're seeking something in life, and if it's your career, this is perfect. Something that you really love doing, something that's a benefit to others, something that fulfills you emotionally and spiritually, but also something that gives you an income and allows you to live your life. So it incorporates the whole lot, and it also doesn't make it walk or shy away from the fact that it's okay to earn an income and make a living from something that you love doing. And in fact, it's an important part of it, because it's all well and good having something that you are inspired to do and you love doing and you're driven to do, and that's what you want to do. But if you can't make a living from it, you've got to find something else to do to sustain yourself. So Ikigai is about having all of those things. It's you know, a not necessarily a career, but if it works out that way, awesome. Something that you love doing, that inspires you, that is benefit to others, but also that you can, you know, make a living from as well. And so, as I say, that was probably a bad summary of what Ikigai actually is, but they're the basic concepts as I understand them anyway, which I like. And I think, you know, sometimes, particularly in healthcare, it's you can shy away from the fact that, you know, and I've worked in private practice for, you know, 30 odd years, that you actually need to pay the bills, you need to make an income. And it's not just about me making an income, it's about providing for my family and providing for my future. And, you know, I've been lucky enough to employ a lot of people, and I need to, you know, in those days, I needed to generate enough work to provide them jobs. They pay tax, which goes back into society. And so there's a whole big loop of things that occur when you're working in business that you do need to understand that if you're not making, you know, if you don't have a profitable business, you go out of business. And then no one's of benefit then. Those people that work for you are out of a job, you're out of a job, your kids, you know, parents haven't got an income. And so it's actually okay to be able to, in healthcare, you can feel okay about providing a really good service, doing a really good job, being good at what you do, and you make an income from it. That's okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I used to think that happiness was in working less or not working and finding a way to, you know, support that in my life. And I feel like a lot of people would share that belief because they might not have found their Ikigai, or they might not be doing work that they love or feel like that's even possible. And so people want to kind of pull away from that. But, you know, I see people that volunteer doing something that they love. You know, it's like we have this intrinsic desire to help others and do things like that.
Yeah. It gets overlooked and underplayed and undervalued in our society a bit, doesn't it? You know, it's harder and harder to get volunteers into anything. You know, when we were our kids were at primary school, you know, we had school balls and school fetes and a whole lot of things that were just run by parents and volunteers, and they were such great things to do. They, you know, it was at the busiest time of your life, but you found time to do it and fit it in. And, you know, we look back at that and it's so valuable. And I worry about people not volunteering for those things or putting their hand to them because they're missing that experience. And there is something special about, you know, giving of your time and not looking for anything in return. And, you know, I'm guilty. I don't do enough of that too. But again, it's a time thing, I guess. You try and prioritise different things. But I always look and think, you know, if you've got an opportunity to do something for others, a group or an individual, that you're not looking for anything in return, it does give you a bit of a buzz. And you're right. I think innately most humans feel that. But they just don't maybe get the opportunity or create the opportunity to do it enough. And that's something I would certainly want to do more of, I guess.
I don't know if I agree with that. I see you doing a lot for others in a selfless way. So a bit of background, Marty's been mentoring me through the Physiotherapy Association mentor program since last year for nothing. So mentors in there do it purely voluntarily. And, you know, we catch up once a month or so and go through things. And the amount of help and value that you have given me for literally nothing has been just incredible, like so much.
Well, that's a good example of, I guess, a two-way street, isn't it? You know, I keep fronting up for those hour meetings because, well, A, I committed to it, but B, you know, it's been a two-way street. I've learned lots from you, and I'm inspired by you. I love inspirational people having a crack and doing things. You know, sometimes you fail, but you not you necessarily, but sometimes we fail, and you know, that you just got to get up and find another way to get going again and do things differently. You know, I've lost count of the amount of times I've tried to do different things in our business, and they're totally a dog's breakfast and a disaster. But you look back at it and think, okay, well, I learned stuff from that, and you move down a different pathway. And I love that whole idea of you live or die by your own decisions, in business and life. I like being captain and coach. I've got to admit that. I don't know how I would have gone working for somebody my whole career. I like, making mistakes and being responsible for them, and then trying to fix them up, as well as making some good decisions that are successful, and then thinking to myself, okay, that wasn't too bad. But it's a two-way street, that whole mentoring thing, for sure. That's a great example, I guess, of volunteering. You're right, of where I suppose, I'm giving it my time, but I've benefited so much from this volunteer program, this mentoring program, as you have, probably.
Yeah, heaps. I like what you were saying about that, like personal responsibility. I was reading a book once called Good to Great, and they were talking about the great leaders of companies there was something that went wrong, would always look to themselves in the mirror. They wouldn't be pointing blame at other people or why things happened. It would always be, okay, how is this, not my fault, but my responsibility, and what can I do to change things next time? And conversely, the leaders that were, where their companies sort of went downhill, were the ones that would always point away from them, like, where can I assign blame or responsibility and not look at myself and what I'm doing?
Totally. And, a classic line that I've lived my whole life, and I think stole from somebody, and you hear a bit, if you're not making mistakes, you're not having a go. If you're running a business and all your staff are terrified of making a mistake, it's a disaster. You want people having a go and learning, making mistakes and learning from it and collect it. And it's the same in leadership, and the same in running a business. If I can't own my own mistakes and fess up to them, approach them with a good humour, I think that's another thing. We all take ourselves and life way, way, way too seriously. And I think if we can understand that we're such a minute, insignificant, speck in the whole universe, that our little mistakes that we make every now and again aren't as, disastrous as you may think. And in fact, they end up being really positive things more times, more often than not. Certainly, I have this conversation with my kids a fair bit about different things, and, everyone makes a blue, and that's good. It's what you do next. It's what you do next after you make a mistake that defines you, not the fact that you made the mistake. It's what you do about it. Have you got enough courage to go and apologise to someone when you've said something you shouldn't have said? Have you got, and then that personal friendship and relationship just, gets stronger when you do that. Can you humbly, same thing, apologise to your spouse if you've been, an ass? And do you have the humility to reflect on yourself and think, I'm being an ass? It's okay, to make those mistakes, but what are you going to do about it afterwards? That's what defines you.
Yes, I love that. And I love that it's like, if you do make a mistake, don't beat up on yourself, learn the lesson, and then go and, make it right or do what you need to do. Like you were saying, it's the next step that makes it, a positive or a negative experience. Yeah,
and it can be hard, can't it? Because we've all got that inner critic in there, just waiting to pounce on you as soon as you've made a mistake. See, you are a useless bugger, or you are hopeless in that space. That voice, and you've got to, it's hard work, but you've got to be, I guess, sensitive to hearing that voice, and when you notice it and hear it, call it out. Be prepared to call out the inner critic. That's a tough thing to learn, but I think being able to call out that inner critic in those times, particularly when you've made a mistake, can just help you just trust that you're actually a good person, and your motivation for making that mistake was, I didn't want to make that mistake, and now I'm going to try and fix it up or correct, do it different next time, or learn from it, move forward. Not dying out and be stuck in that space. And calling out the inner critic is probably another really important part of that whole dealing with your mistakes thing too, I reckon.
Where did you learn that, calling out your inner critic?
I'm going to say from my wife again, because she's much smarter than me. I would say, from reading stuff, and there would have been, our bookshelf is full of a whole lot of personal development books, which most of which I haven't read, but I learned through osmosis through my wife, who teaches meditation and mindfulness, and has had a bit of a journey herself, and along that journey I've been lucky enough to pick up some real gems, and do some of that self-exploration stuff involved in that too, just at different times when it's been really helpful. It's been great. And I've also found those learnings really valuable when I'm talking to patients, actually, in my work, which it's given me an extra skill set, probably in the last 10 years that comes, I guess, with maturity and age and experience as well, and just learning to, again, humbly listen to people, which is hard to do when you've got all this information and you want to help people. Sometimes you jump in way, way, way too soon. And one thing I've learned, the more I've learned, is just shut up and listen, mostly, and then by doing that, you're going to be a lot more effective in trying to help people, whatever it is, whether it's mentoring, whether it's being a physiotherapist, whether it's being a dad, whether it's being a partner, or a mate. I'm constantly trying to be a better listener.
Yeah, absolutely. A massive skill. We're always listening to talk, not listening to learn or really see the other person, what they're really trying to say.
It's so true. So true. Everyone's got a story, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have a religious or spiritual background, or is a lot of this personal development or?
No, great question. I grew up in a very conservative Catholic family. So I went to Catholic primary school, Catholic secondary school. My mum and dad were brought up Catholics. We're all Catholics. Not great practicing ones, but we had the strict, rule: go to mass on Sunday, blah, 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 blah. But as we got older, we all got a bit slacker. I'm the youngest of 5. And so by the time I came along, mum and dad lost their puff a little bit, but they kept going to church. And, that was our underpinning. In recent times, and I wouldn't say I was religious, but I certainly in my teenage years explored that concept of spirituality and Catholicism in particular. But it was, there was a whole lot of things about that I didn't get and didn't like. And now I really, my religion for probably the last, 25 years, I guess, is I would describe myself as a secular humanist.
What is that?
Well, secular meaning that one thing, we've travelled a lot as well overseas and through and seen, Southeast Asia and various other countries, and seen a lot of Hinduism, a lot of Buddhism, some Islamic faith. And one thing I've found is that pretty much all the religions have a whole lot in common, and it's about, caring for one another and so on. And unfortunately, extreme views in any of those religions go too far and cause problems. But there is a genuine commonality amongst them all, and that's, about, finding some spirituality and doing some good for others. And that's the overwhelming majority of people in all of those religions. And I hate the demonising of, Muslims or people other than, Christian faith, really. Christianity's done plenty of bad things too, and still does. But I suppose, so my secular views are that regardless of your religion, if it's morally bound in a good moral foundation about doing good for others and respecting other people's views, that's the secular part of it. And humanism is that the belief that all humans are essentially good. If they're given the chance, we're born good. Things change, and depending on their circumstance and environment, and maybe upbringing, certainly upbringing, their physical environment, what happens to them can change people, but generally people are mostly good. So I don't believe in a God anymore. I think spirituality is ingrained and within people. I had a great question from my youngest daughter, probably now 9 or 10 years ago. So, she's 28 now. So she was, a young adult, and we had through a really rough time. We lost a few friends in 2016-17, unfortunately, and one of them was a good friend of ours who was 48, had diagnosis of lung cancer, never made his 50th birthday, never smoked a cigarette in his life, healthy, etc. And when he passed away, after he passed away, my youngest daughter asked me, said, "Dad, do you believe in the afterlife?" And I was sitting out in our backyard, with her, and we're just having this chat. She asked me that question. I said, "That's a great question." And I thought about it there and then, because I hadn't really given much thought. I said, "You know what? This friend of mine, Matt," I said, "I never really thought about him. I used to think about him like you do your friends every now and again. But I said, but since he's died, I think about him every day, and it's still the case. This far down the track, since Matt passed away, there's something will happen every day where I think of him." And I said, "He's more alive in my life now, in my mind and heart, than he was when he was alive. So maybe that is the afterlife." But I don't believe in a heaven and a hell and all that sort of stuff. Interesting philosophies, around reincarnation and so on. Maybe there's a bit of that. I don't believe that necessarily. I don't embrace that concept either. But I believe in spirituality in people, not in a deity or a god or a religion per se.
And from just observing you and knowing you, I think you embody that really well in terms of, integrity and being generous to others and having a kind heart and speaking truth. I think you certainly embody that.
Thank you, Jackie. That's lovely.
Alrighty. Shall we segue back over to physio a little bit?
Yeah.
How do you feel the profession's evolved? You mentioned earlier that it was a little bit what did you say? Like
passive?
More passive? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
How do you feel it's evolved since then?
But yeah, that's great. Certainly when I graduated, and in that time, those early days, that the successful physios, outwardly perceived to be successful physios, were the ones that were just churning through people. So, it was, and I worked as a student. I did a student placement in a very successful private practice in Melbourne, and that was the norm, is that if you're not seeing 3 an hour, pumping them through, you've got 2 rooms on the go at least, someone on a hot pack, someone on a machine, back and forward, then that's how you made your living in private practice. That was the norm. I remember when we opened our practice in Yarrawonga in 1992, I started probably with that concept, but pretty quickly I changed to, you know what, I'm going to spend my whole consultation in the room, one-on-one with this patient. I'm not leaving the room to go and see someone else or change a hot pack or tweak a traction machine or whatever, which is what the norm was. And that was a bit different at the time in those, private practice models. But it was just a lot more enjoyable way to work, So I figured, and I still do that, while a patient has a consultation time with me, they deserve 100% of my attention for that whole time. And so, I don't answer phones. I don't do anything while I'm seeing patients. So that's been one change in private practice. The other change, I guess, just more broadly, is the whole development of evidence-based practice is a relatively new thing. So again, the last 25 years, I guess, and that understanding and weighting of importance towards evidence-based practice. Physiotherapy has really led certainly in the allied health front. It's been at the forefront of that for 25 years or more. And so there's been a lot more resource put into physiotherapy research, foundations, and so on. And certainly new graduates are very, very aware of evidence-based, and looking for an evidence base to what they do. That's come. It needs to come back a little bit, because there's still the art and the science of physiotherapy, I think, is really important. So a classic line I got from some reading or someone taught me was the lack of evidence doesn't equal lack of efficacy. So that just because there is no randomized controlled trial double-blinded telling us that this particular technique is effective and makes any difference to outcomes doesn't mean it's not efficacious. It can be. And so I often will have a conversation with younger physios about the clinical evidence before you is also very powerful. So yes, we have science and research to back what we do, but we also have clinical evidence every day in our intervention. So I might assess somebody, intervene with a mini treatment, reassess something. If it's a positive outcome, I might intervene again, more positive outcome. There's my evidence that I'm on the right track in terms of a clinical intervention to help this person. So yes, we definitely need to understand the science and the research, but also understand its limitations with respect to our profession, because it is very difficult to randomise control trial a whole lot of the techniques that we do, as it is in many other professions. But just because there isn't an RCT to support a particular intervention doesn't mean it's not helpful. So as long as we're reflecting on that regularly, and yes, we're up with the evidence, I think that's been a really big change too. So I don't want to see us, and I think we have gone a bit too far down the evidence only, but if there's no evidence for it, it doesn't work. And so how that has manifested itself is there's a whole lot more exercise physiotherapists who only prescribe and exercise as their main treatment, when in fact I'm still pushing the barrow really hard for young physios to be really good manual therapists. Got to be really good manual therapists, because it's beneficial, it's helpful, it helps people get better, and you can help people get better quicker.
I completely agree with that. I think I was part of the wave of physios that were leaning more towards exercise, and that was a huge, probably the most part of what I did for a while. And then I started to learn about the benefits. Like I would always do a bit of a mix, but it would always have more of a lean to the exercise. And then learnt how powerful the hands-on treatment can be, and that's had more and more of a place in sort of my practice as well. So I love what you're saying there, that hands-on, even though it might have less evidence, although I still think there's quite a good bit of evidence there to support it too.
And how good is it getting your hands on someone from that tactile experience? What a privilege! What a privilege to be able to put your hands on somebody. They consent that and feel safe enough and to let you do it. Number one, and number two, that you can do that and make a change that's measurable right there and then. It's a bloody privilege, and it's a great skill to be able to have, isn't it? Really, it's not healing hands. That's a bit too extreme, but to be able to do something with your hands like that and make somebody feel better is a bit of gives you a bit of a buzz.
I think people want to feel better straight away too. They come in with pain, they come in with some sort of problem, which is really affecting their life. And, if you're in pain, you're sort of thinking about that all the time. Yeah. And if you can help someone with that straight away, that's a big impact.
And touch is very powerful, Again, we shy away from that, and as long as, we understand that what we're doing can be really, really helpful.
Absolutely. What do you think about AI and how AI might impact our profession?
Well, it's funny you asked that. We were having this conversation Friday with some younger physios here where I'm working now, and one of them made the comment, because I was pushing the barrow about being good manual therapists, because that's what I do, and to these young physios. And one of the guys brought up the AI. He said he read something or heard something about AI that it's going to replace, but particularly the exercise prescription side of things. I think you're going to get in time really good advice from AI about, okay, what's the best exercise to fix my low back pain or whatever. You might get a few, some good exercises in time. Certainly not now. I see a lot of harm done by people with that example about low back pain. I see a lot of harm done by people to themselves by getting, inappropriate exercise for that particular spinal condition. But in time, I think that's clearly going to get so much better. but AI can never replace manual therapy. And so my point being, for our profession, if we want to keep physiotherapy at the forefront of healthcare for musculoskeletal intervention in particular, we've got to be really good at hands-on physiotherapy, because the exercise stuff's going to be done better, a whole lot better, by either AI or other professions anyway.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. But I also think it can be a great tool for us as well.
You bet.
You know, if we're doing good manual therapy in conjunction with using AI as a tool for our exercise prescription, you know, to sort of really, you know, make what we do a little bit better in terms of how we prescribe exercises. It's kind of help the profession as well.
We've got to embrace it and make it fit in with what we're doing, you know, and if that means, okay, the AI is going to sort out the exercise side of things for this consult, then I can concentrate more on the manual therapy side of things. It gives me more time for that.
Absolutely. Can you take me through your career journey a little bit? So where are you now? And how did you sort of get here?
Well, my current situation is I work 3 days a week, most weeks in private practice, essentially for myself and my wife and I. My wife Mandy is also a physiotherapist, and so we've effectively been in a physiotherapy business together since 1992, when we established a small private practice in Yarrawonga part-time, and we went into partnership with our really good friends, still really good friends, Tony and Gail O'Donnell, and we had practice in Wangaratta as well. That business grew over time, and we had Pilates studios, and we worked at a private hospital here in Wangaratta, and we had many staff and practices in Yarrawonga, Wangaratta, Benalla. Partnerships sort of came and went along the way, but we basically evolved that business, Northeast Life, into Northeast Life in over 25 years. After 25 years in 2016, it was a milestone year. I turned 50. As I said, we'd lost some friends, and it was right. I dropped the bombshell that it's time to just change and pivot. So Mandy and I, again, it took a couple of years to get out of that business, but we ended up just setting up our own little practice, and now we've moved just a month ago, and now I'm working in a bigger private practice again, but not as a partner. I have no control over the business, other than I roll in and see my patients and roll out, and it's fantastic. It's a great environment. Prior to going to private practice, I worked 2 years in the hospital system here in Wangaratta, the Wang-based hospital, as a new grad physio. We also worked overseas. We did 2 locums in the UK at different times in 1991, and which was a great experience. My other, I guess, element to my career is I've worked in particular underage football. So I've looked after the Murray Bush Rangers for 20 years as a physiotherapist. And for the last, maybe since 2017, I've been the lead physio at the Vic Country Under-18 program, the AFL Talent Pathway program. In 13, 14, and 16 to 18, I worked at Carlton Footy Club as physio part-time as well. So footy is still very much a part of what I do. So I still work in the AFL Talent Pathways program part-time, and I've been very lucky to meet some unreal people and have some great experience along the way. But right now I've got a nice balance of my private practice work and my footy stuff, which is going really well.
So a lot of physios, this might not be the case, but this is kind of what I sort of think when I see physios. A lot of them really want to go into, or private practice physios, into like sports physio, and being in the AFL as you are would be an absolute dream for a lot of physios. What do you think were the attributes or the reasons why you were sort of fortunate to fall into that?
That's easy to answer. It's a it's a funny thing. I never, ever, not once had an aspiration to work in the AFL. I wanted to be really good at looking after the under-18s program here. And so I was always trying to do more to be better at looking after these aspirational, evolving, emerging young athletes. And as part of that, I, in 2013, in October, I went down to the AFL Combine. I organised, rang the physio in charge of the Combine and said, look, I just want to come down because I'd seen over the few years that our boys from Murray were going down, the ones that have been selected for the Combine, were going down for the medical screening day. And I wanted to see what the medical screening involved so that I could better prepare them in future years, so I knew what was going on. And so I went down for the medical screening day to the AFL Combine in 2013. And this is an event, still happens, where all the AFL club physios and doctors come in, and one by one, the players, there might be 120 players, this was the boys only at this time, the boys came through one by one and were inspected essentially by the medical staff of the AFL clubs. So these were prospective draftees. Anyway, on that day, I was chatting to a few physios. There was quite a few physios in the AFL clubs that I knew. They were my vintage. Some of them, I'd been through uni with and whatever. So I was just yakking away and observing whatever. And I bought Craig Christie, who was one of the physios at Carlton at the time, who I knew. I said, look, I'm going to grab a coffee. Do you want a coffee? And I bought him a coffee and the Carlton doctor a coffee. And it was the best coffee I ever bought, as it turns out, because, about 3 weeks later, I had a phone call at work and it was Craig Christie. And he put it to me this way. He said, listen, Marty, the reason I'm ringing is we're going to Arizona. We've got our camp in Arizona coming up and we need another physio. And I thought, who would be a good physio to room with? And I thought of you. So the reason I got the job at the AFL is because Craig Christie thought I'd be a good rooming partner for him in Arizona.
Nice.
I hope I was. I do snore apparently, and but I don't hit snooze on the alarm. You just alarm and up and going, and that was one of the key rules, I think, is if you're going to share a room, you can't be hitting snooze 4 times. You either set the alarm and then get up. So anyway, so I got that opportunity went to Arizona. It was meant, and I said to people then, it was like winning a physiotherapy lottery that I never entered. And it was just such a wonderful, incredible experience, hard work, but great experience. And then that should have been the end of it. But then there was a problem in January. They with their personnel at Carlton, Craig got sick actually. And so they rang me again and said, listen, Marty, can you come back in? So I worked there for a while then, and I only had a limited time I could do it because we were going overseas. So I worked through that period. And then 2 years later, they rang me again. So I finished, and we were in Hawaii actually, and I got a phone call from Craig and said, listen, there's a part-time job here again at Carlton. We want you to come and do it. So I went down for another 3 years and did that part-time. So that was just the other thing he did say, though, wasn't just about being a good roomie. He said, look, I see you at these PD events a bit, and I thought, well, Marty's having a go. So, it was he had really no idea whether clinically I was a great physio or an average physio. It was more about, I guess, intent. He'd seen that I was legit and just keen and learning. But as I said, I had no aspiration to work in the AFL at all.
I love that story. And I think it's sort of, it's almost understated if you call it an accident. It's like, I kind of feel like the bricks and the pieces that you built before that moment, everything that you kind of built up in sort of the person that you were, and, the presence that you bring to consultations, the desire to be a good physio and do your best, they're the things that sort of stacked up. And then when the moment came, you were ready to sort of step into that.
Yeah, and it coincided actually, now I look back now, it coincided with the time I was doing my Masters, or I just finished it, I can't remember, but I was in the process of just finishing my Masters in Musk, and that also kicked me along. I'd been in a physio for a long time, and then I decided, right, I'm going to do some post-grad, and doing that Masters really kicked me along in terms of my learning and my confidence and just getting better. And so I guess some of those attributes that I'd learned and picked up by doing my Masters definitely got me in a sweet spot that, I was a better clinician. And that was, probably not a coincidence that all happened at around about the same time. I think you're probably right, actually.
I remember you telling me once you were talking about business, and you were saying how, you might have used to think you were very fortunate or something in business, but then when you reflected on it, it was, you were proactively working on things and always kind of doing things to make things better and working on your professional development and all of these things.
Yeah.
Can you talk into that a little bit?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point too. It's the classic thing about, the harder you work, the luckier you get. But but the motivation, our motivation always was, and I often said our business, I again, this was a bit of imposter syndrome, I guess. And certainly while we were living it and doing it, and I reckon for a good 20, 25 years, I thought we're going to get found out here, because whilst we had a really successful business and things were going well and we had some great staff and everything was great, I thought it's only a matter of time, because I'm a terrible business person. I had no real idea. It took us 20 years before we started writing, plans, etc. But I look back and reflect now, and I think, what, our business plan was pretty straightforward. It was just be really good at what we want. That's what we were striving to be, is just good physios. We wanted to be the best physios we could possibly be. And we wanted to provide good treatments for our patients all the time. And we had great staff as a result. And so part of that was, I've spent, I did the sums once, it's over 100 grand, probably close to 150 grand on, out of our own pocket on professional development over my career. And I'm still doing professional development and learning, because that keeps me hopefully good at what I do, getting better at what I do, and always, looking for more. And so our business model was just be really, really good, and then the rest looks after itself. That was my experience of it. And it was only after reflecting, as I said, 25 years later, that I thought, what, that's actually a legit business plan. So I could have had all these different KPIs and measures financially, and all the plans. We did them, and I used to hate doing them. I used to look at them, because all it often did was I'd look back a year later and think, oh, well, we didn't achieve this and we didn't achieve this, and all these things I didn't do. Useless bugger. But hold on, we're still going well. Our clinics, our diaries are full. Patients keep coming back and loving us. So we must have been doing something right, and we were. And our focus was very much being good and having a passion and a drive to just keep getting better at what our chosen profession was. And then the business side of things just looked after itself, to be honest. It's probably I don't know if that's a legit business plan that would get across the line at if you were doing marketing or business management in uni, but it worked for us, and it was a really nice way to work. I'm more comfortable, much more comfortable reflecting and thinking that than, I made a successful business based on screwing down my employees or, driving them hard to get certain numbers in diaries or whatever. We weren't that at all. We were all about developing our young physios, and I reflect now and I look at so many young physios now that are running their own practices in the region, whatever, that worked and came through our program. And we had one small, part in their journey, but, it's something we're really proud of for sure.
Just sort of a springboard, I guess, that good early experience and that confidence in your, clinical work and in yourself as well.
Yeah, and I've seen since, and spoken to young physios that they land in jobs where they have unrealistic expectations put on them to deliver certain numbers and so on. And you know what? They walk away from the profession really quickly after that, and it's horrible, because it's such a great profession, and they don't deserve that. And whereas if you can just like all young graduates in any profession, you have your moments, particularly in that first 6 months in or whatever, where you think, I'm hopeless. We used to have our young physios in tears not all the time, but but occasionally. And once we sat down with them and unpacked what it was that upset them, they moved on, and they thought, oh, I'm not as bad as I thought, and they weren't. They were great. And as I said to you, a lot of them now are just fantastic physios in the region. So, so our business was very much driven by just being really good at what we do. And particularly in a small community like ours, people get it, people get it. And They will wait to see you if they have confidence and trust that you're good at what you do. They tell other people, and so that was our I guess marketing was just be really good. I mean, we did all the marketing and bits and pieces along the way. We had to do that, but I think you got to be genuine, not just find a product that you think, oh, this is going to fill a space in the market, even though I don't like it, I'm going to put it in there. That's a disaster. You've got to be really good at what you want to do, and you want to be driven and genuinely motivated to do whatever it is, your business that you want to do. Otherwise it'll fail.
Yeah, I
and
completely
you'll feel
agree.
crap. That allowed us to just go home most days. Yeah, you'd be buggered after a busy day, but yeah, it's kept us motivated to just keep getting better, I reckon, because we genuinely wanted to be good at it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there's something really profound in what you've touched on there. A lot of the business owners that I see that have a lot of success and actually really a lot of fulfillment in what they're doing are the ones that just love what they're doing. They found their ikigai, they found the spark, the thing that I just want to work on this. The money will come. I don't care about that. I'm not doing it for success or money. I just want to be the best at what I'm doing, and I want to be really good at this.
For sure.
And everything else falls into place.
People used to ask me, like, oh, have you had a good month? And I'm thinking, financially. So what was? And I think, no, I haven't looked at the figures. I wouldn't have a clue. I've been busy.
Yeah.
But the other thing I think my takeaway in business is just just be a nice person. Look after your staff. Obviously physiotherapy is a people business, and that extends to your staff. Like, we've had so many wonderful physios come through, and admin staff, many of which, as I say, I can see them now, bump into them, and we still get on and have a good chat. And so people, invest in your people. That and I think in any business, I don't care what it is, if you invest in your people, it pays you back enormously in terms of a business, but it also personally, it fills your cup.
Yeah, absolutely. A question I probably should have asked earlier: what is a physio? What do we do?
What is a physio?
Yeah.
Buggered if I know. Depends who you ask. Well, my physio experience is limited to, I guess, certainly more recently to musculoskeletal and sports physiotherapy. However, physio is a great profession because it's so diverse and there's so many areas in it. I think probably in a nutshell, and I worked, a little brag, in 1991, I was the head physio for 6 weeks at Grimsby District Hospital in the UK. I was in charge of the stroke unit. So I did some neuro back then and rehab, and it was fantastic. And again, I can still remember a couple of patients from that experience that I'll never forget, and shaped my career. But I guess physio is a profession that essentially about helping people move better and be able to physically achieve whatever their best is, without pain, discomfort, or within their pain and discomfort scenario, but at least try and optimize people's movement and activity levels, I guess, participation levels. And that could be true whether we're talking about musc sports, cardiopulmonary, neuro physios, rehab physios, pediatric physios, whatever. I think that probably sums up what we're all trying to do in a different way, whether you work in a preventative program, an education program, or whatever. What we're really striving to do is help people develop and fulfill their optimum movement abilities and lifestyle abilities within whatever constraints they may have. How about that?
Nice. It's really hard to summarize, I think.
It is.
A lot of different branches you can go down, and different aspects to it.
Which makes it exciting, which makes it an exciting profession.
For sure. You do a bit of work with concussion. Can you tell me about concussion and what can physios do with that?
Well, it's not a huge area. I mean, I obviously see acutely concussions occur, and then I'll be involved in, I guess, overseeing return to play programs for footballers who have been concussed. essentially, I think the first thing physios need to be able to do with concussion is be good at recognising, diagnosing, and educating parents and players and coaches about what concussion is. Thankfully now it's so much better resourced and understood than it was. You know, it used to be, I used to get a lot of pushback when I would rule players out with concussion before it became a thing, you know, young players in particular. And luckily I was supported really well at the footy club that I worked at Bushrangers, where they just didn't question and said, right, this is, you know, these are the international guidelines around managing concussion. I'm talking, 15 years ago, more. And so these are the international guidelines around managing concussion. We should implement these. And they just said, yep, that's what we'll do. So we were ruling out players and not playing them long before it was the done thing. Now, thankfully, the general public has flipped the other way. Back then, parents and, you know, particularly dads, I'd get a lot of pushback about, oh, no, he's fine. And I'd say, bad luck, these are our rules. Now it's the other way. Parents are very concerned, as they should be, and so we get a lot of support around that space. So, number one, be good at understanding what it is, recognising what it is, being able to diagnose it and educate players, coaches, parents about what concussion is, and then what the pathway moving forward is. So the pathway moving forward, I guess, from a physio perspective, is just recognising those neurological I guess, potential ongoing neurological issues and helping resolve them, whether they're vestibular issues, balance-related issues, coordination-related issues, and being skilled enough to be able to recognise those and provide some strategies as the player moves through to stage them back to a state where it's safe for them to proceed or return to their chosen sport, whatever that might be. And then there's a few complexities in there, you know, being able to recognise some of the complexities, you know, so maybe some people might have a coexisting neck-related contributor to some of their symptoms. So being able to recognise those sort of things. So there's certainly some upskilling that you need to do to be working in that space. I'm certainly no expert, but it is an area we do a bit with and more with now. And there's a lot of education and resources out there pitched at a whole lot of levels. You can look at the really advanced education stuff for healthcare practitioners, and you can also look at download, fact sheets for parents, coaches, players, etc. So there's a lot of resource there. So it's really important that we educate ourselves around that now, because it's not going away.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, more understood now that, concussion is actually an impact, an injury to the brain, a brain injury. And, it needs to be treated like that.
Yep.
And the whole body effects that can come with that, like you said, coordination issues and different effects on the body and fatigue and all of this.
And mental health issues, in those longer standing ones too, there's emotional and mental health stuff that can spawn from, a concussion event. So it's quite diverse, and everyone's different. Every person can react differently, and then if they've had more than one concussion, it becomes more serious. So it's really important, area for us to continue to keep learning.
Absolutely. I know I've had a couple of concussions in the past with sport, and it's awful, and you feel awful and emotional, and it actually affects your gut health too. So so it got far-reaching kind of consequences to having that, and an accumulative effect.
And who would have thought the mind and body are connected? Hey?
What? Yes. What are some of the most informative courses or mentors that you've had?
Oh, wow, Jackie. So I think mentors for me, my original partner, Tony O'Donnell, he would be embarrassed to hear this, but he was a great mentor because he was a really good people person, and still is. And he cared. I think that that was obvious in his data. So that was great learning. You have so many incidental moments where people come in and be mentors for you, I guess, over your career. Certainly in my time at Carlton, I had some great, again, it wasn't an an official mentorship, but when you're working with people and you're observing and communicating and exchanging ideas, there's a whole lot of mentoring going on then. I think some of the young physios that work for me, whilst I was outwardly mentoring them, they were mentoring me, a bit like what I said with you and I before. You learn as you go along from everybody who comes into your world. Probably my best mentors are my patients. The ones that get better, the ones that don't get better, you learn from. If you're observing and listening, every opportunity, every consult's an opportunity to learn something. So mentors, I think, are ongoing, and I think there's life mentors as well. Obviously, friends. I'm certainly not someone who says, I had this moment where this one mentor changed me. I don't have that experience, but I think if I reflected and had more time, I'd probably, be able to pluck out more and more names. But I think they all had little bits of the jigsaw puzzle for me, and will, continue to be the case. Courses, well, from a physio perspective, a bit bland, but I did the McKenzie training right through. So I'm a credentialed McKenzie therapist, and I did that early days right through, and it was very, very influential in the way I worked. And part of the thing I still look back at and why it was so helpful and still a really good thing to do is because a lot of it was about empowering patients to self-manage and educating patients. It was a massive plank in the treatment is giving patients the skill to not be reliant on healthcare professionals, so they're not coming back and being dependent, but they're actually independent in managing their problem, and you could give them, confidence early, often with serious problems, nasty back pain, give them some really good skills, self-management skills and confidence to get better early. And I look back now, in that McKenzie approach where it's basically stratifying people according to their clinical presentation as opposed to making a pathoanatomical diagnosis, which now a lot of the evidence is showing us is a better way to work. Who would have thought? Well, Robin McKenzie was advocating that in the 70s, and also empowering patients, removing fear or reducing fear when someone's in pain, and doing that early, and empowering them to help them self-manage and get better. Also now the evidence is showing us delivers better results, and stops people flipping over into chronicity with pain issues. And again, that was another key plank of the McKenzie approach. So I reflect back on those learnings and think, and it's safe, and it's a safe way to go. And I look back and I think, it's withstood and actually is gaining even more kudos over the fulfillment of time, and so that was probably, if I had to pick one thing, I would say it was doing my McKenzie training.
I love that. I was just thinking about the parallels between what you were saying, rather than sort of focusing on a narrow diagnosis, it's, how is the body moving as a whole, and how is everything kind of integrated and connected?
Yes.
It's kind of like the difference between sort of maybe a medical approach and a functional medicine approach, where we're looking at a specific disease or diagnosis, or how is the body connected and working together physiologically. So it's all...
Yeah. And as humans, we're complex. There's a whole lot of layers to us. And if we're just focusing on an anatomical structure, guess what? You're going to miss the boat most times out of 10.
Yep, absolutely. Got one last question for you, Marty.
Yeah.
How's being a granddad?
Oh, Jackie. I'm welling up thinking about it. We are lucky enough, so blessed to have two beautiful little grandies. Harriet's 10 months now, I think, and Vinny's 18 or 19 months, and they are gorgeous, and we love it, and they bring so much joy to our kids, which is fantastic. The two lots of parents, but also our youngest daughter, who's Auntie Claire, who's just loves it, and we love seeing our kids being parents and growing into that role, and doing their best. As it can be pretty tough at times, but they just work through together and help each other out. And they've got two of the most gorgeous, happy, joyous little bundles ever. And so we are loving it. It's I was always looking forward. I love little babies, and I was always looking forward to being a grandparent. And I put a lot of pressure on them to hurry up and get on with it. But anyway, now that they have, it's exceeded our expectations. We just, again, we pinch ourselves every day, and just feel so blessed to have them. Yeah, we're loving it. I'll bang on for hours, Jackie, about that.
I know.
They're gorgeous.
I had to ask the question because you just light up every time you talk about them.
Well, they're so funny. They're so funny and so gorgeous and so cuddly, and just everything about them I love. Yeah, there you go.
I love hearing you talk about them.
Now I miss them. I got to go. I feel like I've just got to hang up on you and go. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, but they're in Geelong. I can't just drive around the corner and see them. But yeah, look, we just love spending time with them and seeing them. I can't wait. I can't wait to just watch them grow up and do things together. You know, and every time we see them, you know, they're developing and they're getting better, and just see them develop is fantastic. Yeah, really, really good.
Beautiful. I love that, Marty.
That's great, Jackie.
Thank you for being a guest today.
My pleasure.